Okay, this is pretty insane. OpenAI is launching their own version of the iPhone, and it's shipping in less than 12 months. Yesterday, an analyst which has the highest hit rate of any Apple product leak dropped a report that revealed that OpenAI is building their own phone, and it's being designed by the very guy that designed the original iPhone, Jony Ive. They're targeting around 40 to 50 million units for year one, which is larger than the opening sales of the iPhone itself. Now, this is a very convincing rumor, but we wanted to investigate, one, whether this was real, and it led us down the craziest rabbit hole ever. We pulled up Anthropic and OpenAI's job postings, and it revealed a hidden product roadmap that we're going to talk about on this show. There's over 750 open roles between them, and it revealed a 24-month, 2-year product roadmap that no one else is talking about. It didn't only confirm that OpenAI is building a phone, but it also tells us how the companies themselves are actually building in a very different strategic path from each other.
Yeah, I didn't believe this, and I still don't believe it, but every single rumor is pointing towards the fact that OpenAI is building an OpenAI phone, and it is going to be designed by the same person who is building an iPhone. And we kind of have a brief of generally what we can expect. I think most noteworthy of this most recent leak is that they've expedited timelines. So there's a high probability that 1 year from now, we will be holding an OpenAI smartphone in our hands. Now, what is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? We have some loose ideas of that, starting with the form factor. It seems like they're going for the traditional smartphone, not the screenless Jony Ive device. This isn't a pendant. It's not glasses. They're going for like a proper phone replacer. So I would expect it to look like the iPhone. The big idea is that they're going to replace the operating system with an AI-first operating system. And we've always talked about how OpenAI is trying to build the AI-first OS, but this is going to be the actual hardware in which it can be integrated on. Traditionally, iPhones, you have that grid system where all your apps live. Yeah, we have a great rendering on screen. This will be fully predictive. So this is pending on a few things. One is that OpenAI is able to figure out the software stack in time, which, 12 months seems like an eternity. I'm sure they'll be able to figure it out. And the other is that they'll be able to actually convince people to go and use this device instead of an iPhone. Now, this is separate from the product suite that we've mentioned in the past, where Jony Ive was developing earbuds or a pendant or a little puck that sits on your desk. This is a full-blown display with a screen and a smartphone all integrated. It seems like it's going to be built on top of OpenAI's cloud, so I would expect memory and a lot of the graphical processing power to not be as important because a lot of it is going to be offloaded to OpenAI's cloud. And I think this is really interesting news. This isn't what I was expecting. I thought they were going to be the third device, like your computer, your phone, your maybe earbuds, but they're going for that phone slot. And this was really surprising for me to hear. But this analyst who was reporting on it, he is the most accurate Apple supply chain analyst in history. And he also seems to have a lot of other people backing him up as well.
Here's the thing. I do think OpenAI is building the third device. They're pitching it as a phone, but it's going to act very, and maybe even look very different to an actual phone. So a few differences I want to point out from the off. This phone is rumored to not have any apps on it at all. You will interact directly with an AI, presumably ChatGPT, and you will feed it your data, your thoughts, your intentions, and it'll either generate apps or user interfaces on the fly, or it'll interact with other AI agents that will conduct the research process, information retrieval, whatever you might need for you on your behalf. So I'm describing here two different things. One, a completely different operating system that is more engineered towards the AI future or AI-centric world. And the other thing is a completely different hardware component system if you want to start serving this. You can imagine a few different things off the back, which is normal phones are oriented around, running video, pictures, making sure apps can run optimally. This one is going to be oriented around inference and making sure prompts are processed and AI agents can run locally, that your data can remain private, and a bunch of other things around that. So I've written a summary here. It's meant to allow OpenAI to win at the operating system level. And what I like about this is there's no other frontier AI lab, namely Anthropic, that is going after the vertically integrated layer. You have Google, which plays on every single layer of the stack for AI. You have Apple that kind of fumbled the model building layer, but has all the distribution through their hardware components. And OpenAI has realized that probably quite early, actually. I have to give Sam credit for this. About a year and a half ago, he said in a very weird tweet that now, in hindsight, makes a lot of sense. I am not OpenAI isn't competing with other AI labs. We're competing directly with Apple. And that is like an OG tweet. I need to find that. But it's making a lot more sense now. Not only is he trying to produce an iPhone competitor or killer, but he's trying to create a range of different devices that can ingest your data either passively or intentionally, feed it to ChatGPT and make it the greatest product experience vector that he can do. Now, a few other things, because I had an immediate question around this, right? How on earth are they going to deliver this in the first half of 2027? OpenAI does not have the supply chain prowess that the likes of Google and Apple already have. Well, the answer is they're going to be outsourcing this to a bunch of third-party users. I believe it's Luxshare, which also happens to be the packaging and assembler of Meta's Ray-Bans. Now, if that's anything to go by, I'm not feeling quite confident at this point. But there's also MediaTek and Qualcomm. MediaTek does a lot of the high processing packaging for a lot of the GPU and NeoCloud assemblers. And Qualcomm has had a lot of favor in the mobile phone market. They have like Snapdragon, which runs in a bunch of Chinese phones specifically, but they have the scale to help OpenAI operate this at a larger extent or to match with iPhone. And the final thing is, what gives me hope is Jony Ive being in the mix here. Josh, I know you probably have some strong thoughts about this, but I think his design touch on top of this kind of like hardware scaling bet will give them the best shot at, at least competing with the iPhone or whatever the next iPhone is going to be later this year.
Yeah, it's so hard to imagine I would want to put another phone in my pocket that's not an iPhone. But if anyone's going to design it, it's going to be the guy who designed the iPhone. And I think this post says 2028. We actually have an update today from Ming, the analyst, who is pushing these timelines up to 2027. In fact, it also gives us a few leaks of kind of the specs that we could expect inside of this phone. And this is something that's interesting too, because we already know what's going to be in this thing. And it's amazing the supply chain and the leaks that are able to get out and stuff. But basically what this is saying is that it's going to be running on all of the cutting edge technology that you'd expect a Frontier iPhone 19 model this year to be running on. They have a deal with TSMC to create those 2 nanometer class transistors. That is the current state of the art. There is nothing better. They're using a lot of low power components. So I think one of the more important things for this phone, because ambient capture is going to be so important, is energy efficiency over raw power. So it seems like some of these design choices they're using are for extended battery life. So it can be on all the time, constantly listening, constantly taking in information. And you have to imagine this form factor, the reason they decided to go with it is because it's the only one that makes sense to be a true assistant throughout your day-to-day. It has the suite of cameras, the microphones, it has the accelerometers, it has the GPS baked into it. That's really difficult to include in this like suite of devices like the earbuds with the small puck. So we have a lot of information on that. We also have, like you were mentioning, the suppliers who they're going to be building with. I mean, these 2 nanometer chips are allegedly going in production in the second quarter of this year. That means these are going to start being made in the next couple of months. And we have deals with MediaTek, Qualcomm, TSMC, and Luxshare. And like you said with Luxshare, they do make Meta's glasses, but they are also Apple's number 2 assembler behind Foxconn. They've built AirPods, the Apple Watch, and an increasing share of the iPhone. So they're using people who are basically the best in the world. They're using best-in-class components, and it's hard to imagine that this device isn't going to be excellent. It seems like Foxconn is also involved, which I didn't realize. And Foxconn currently, they build OpenAI Stargate services. And for those who don't know, Foxconn has basically built every Apple device you've used. Like Foxconn makes all of the iPhones, a bunch of iPads, MacBooks, the whole thing. Foxconn has been building Stargate servers, but now they're also going to be building those Jony Ive design devices while Luxshare takes the smartphone build. So it's this crazy assembly manufacturing setup that they have where I think it's actually going to work. And if any company is going to build a product like this, it's going to be OpenAI. They have the right people in place. They have the cutting edge products. I guess the question is are you actually going to want to put an OpenAI phone in your pocket instead of your iPhone?
Oh, that's an easy answer for me. Absolutely yes. But I'm also a sucker for some of the new devices. I'm not going to replace my iPhone, but I'm going to have it next to it because I want to see what this new operating system is going to look like. And to be honest, I don't think current mobile phones are built for what the future of AI is going to look like or function as. If I'm going to be interactive, look at Siri. Do you use Siri? I sure as hell don't. And I want to be able to use a Siri-enabled, ChatGPT that can do things for me and access all my apps so that I don't have to scroll and tap into them, right? Anyway, to your question around this has to work, I'm probably not as confident that it can work or not as sure that it can work because if you look at this stack that they're building, there's a lot of new things here, right? So OpenAI, ChatGPT is known for absolutely nailing the large language model architecture, right? That's what they've made their bread and butter on. What they haven't proven is that they can get it to function optimally on a small enough device. Now, if there's one thing that Apple has all the experience on is hardware optimization. So if anyone's going to know how to locally run models either on device or through private cloud, because obviously there's a lot of data encryption stuff that needs to happen there, Apple has all the historical knowledge and expertise to be able to potentially pull that off. OpenAI, I'm not entirely sure. Number two, OpenAI really is trying to define like a new AI stack here, like an operating system. That's not only going to be large language models. That's going to be images and image gen. Now, they have the world's leading image gen model, which is great news, right? So they're going to combine these two things. I think their dual architecture allows for like a vision language model to work with an LLM, which is going to be very cool. But I'm also curious, like, how are they going to function with the camera ingestion in live time? Like we're going to use this camera very differently. Maybe it's not to like take pictures, but maybe it's like to show the LLM what we're doing or what we're seeing, and then it can kind of address things. There's a lot of newness is what I guess I'm trying to say at. And I'm not entirely sure they can pull it off, but I'm hoping with Jony Ive at the helm, and again, I'm a Jony Ive fan, that he'll be able to figure it out and pull it off.
Yeah, and I think I like the next thing I'm looking for with these leaks is confirmation that Jony's actually going to be designing this phone.
True.
It seems like he is. I don't understand why they wouldn't put him and the Love From team, or I guess the I.O. team, in charge of designing this. But I want to make sure it's actually him, or if this is actually a hedge against his screenless devices not working. So that's going to be an important thing to follow as we get more information. A lot of the next questions that I was asking myself is, why are they doing this, and why are they doing it so quickly? And I think there's a few reasons for this, right? Because when you think about the amount that they're going to be able to actually build, you said 30 million units is what they're kind of aiming
30 to
for.
40, yep.
30 to 40 billion. So assume these cost $1,000 a piece, which is kind of like a high-end phone price. That's $30 to $40 billion of revenue over 2 years. Anthropic just made $25 billion of revenue in like the last 2 months. So I'm not sure how much is going to move the needle. And I have to assume this is probably for the beginning of that hardware mode, but also the timing is funny because this is rumored to be when they want to IPO. And what better catalysts for getting people excited about your company than to build a new suite of hardware that can compete with Apple? Whether or not it actually does a good job, that is TBD. But I assume this is probably a nice, really big catalyst for them as they go into IPO season as well. And I just can't help but think that that has to play some sort of a role in it. And then there's also the business side where you could bundle subscriptions with it, and they get developer ecosystems for the hardware, and you get that hardware moat. But man, like, Apple's got the hardware moat, and the problem is just a skill issue with software. They just can't build the software. OpenAI is approaching it from the other direction. Can they do it? I don't know. We'll be buying it. We'll certainly be trying it. I promise you that.
If it's around, we'll be buying it. But of course, like, I want to take the bull hat off for a second and talk about like some of the challenges here. Like, number one, we need to make sure that it actually ships in 2027. Number two, we actually need to figure out whether people actually want this thing. I know I do, but I'm a fan of AI in general. Will the averages, will my mom and sister even be interested in this? I think the allure of ChatGPT is good enough. You mentioned bundle subscriptions earlier. I do think that is a good enough selling point versus like, hey, we're launching a phone and we don't really know what to do with it. And then I'm also thinking about Apple's response specifically, because I know Apple is undergoing a very aggressive transition now to orient themselves around the new AI world. They've launched their new M5 chips, which is probably the best consumer device components that can run AI on device. And they've got a new guy at the helm, John Turnus, which is a hardware expert. He's spent the last 35 years building Apple's hardware. He should be the perfect person to build whatever that new device is. So they're going up, it's David versus Goliath. And I don't know whether David's going to win this particular battle, but it's interesting. I think OpenAI will be able to pull something off. They have enough in financing. I think they're going to be raising how much in the IPO? I think it's like 70 to 80 billion, maybe even more, at a $1.3 trillion valuation is the last that I've heard on the rumor mill. So if anyone's going to pull it off, it might be them.
I hope they do. I think if I'm giving my personal take on this, I'm pretty bearish and pretty pessimistic on the phone. I can't imagine, like, the amount of love and addiction that everyone has for their iPhone is so strong. And for OpenAI to come, especially when I'm flip-flopping, people are flip-flopping between Anthropic. We just filmed an episode on Codex when a month ago we were saying Codex kind of stinks. The amount that people are flip-flopping between these services, the amount of kind of buy-in that's required to not only commit to OpenAI, but then transfer your phone that you've had for the last 15 years away from that with all of your iMessages and your social apps, that is going to be incredibly hard to do. And the auxiliary device pathway, the one that Jony was making, the screenless devices, the accessories to the phone, that made sense. Competing directly with the phone, I feel confident they'll be able to bring it to market. Will people be able to buy it? Will people want it? I don't know. I don't think that's the case, but we'll see. We'll see. And that is one of many things that we are going to be kind of discussing as we uncover this roadmap as detectives. Ijas, you've had your magnifying glass out recently, going through the job board listings, seeing what these companies have been up to. What have you found? What is in the roadmap for these companies as we progress, I guess, towards the OpenAI iPhone early next year?
Okay, so just to explain my logic, I was curious my curiosity was piqued by this new phone, right? And I was like, how can I convince myself that this is actually going to be the thing? So I was like, well, let me look at the job postings. If they're hiring for like, a mobile phone engineer or whatever you want to call it directly, then, it's hint, hint, that's probably what they're working on. But I ended up discovering a whole other gold mine, which is their entire product roadmap, OpenAI specifically. And I did the same with Anthropic over the next 24 months. And what surprised me the most is both of these companies I thought would be very similarly aligned in their strategy. They're not. They're actually doing two very different things. And I want to kind of like tell that story over the next couple of minutes. So I looked at OpenAI and I have it displayed up here. I'm not going to walk through the specifics, but I'll give you the general idea of what I found. So there's around 330 job postings currently live as of today. 100 got posted in the last week and a half. So OpenAI is really ramping this up. Now, as you'd probably expect, 25 to 30% of these roles are roughly sitting at the point where it's directly for AI forward engineers. So we're talking about researchers, engineers that can actually build and train the model and make this thing actually useful for them. 12 to 15% of the roles are specifically around infrastructure and engineering roles. And this is where you see a subset of hardware-specific engineers that are focused on devices specifically. So one could assume that if OpenAI is building a mobile phone or a suite of different devices, this is where the roles are being hired for. And it takes up a non-trivial percentage of the available roles. Now, when I step back from this, right, this seems, I guess, kind of surprising, but pretty obvious. OpenAI underwent a code red over the last, I was going to say 6 months, but it's literally only been like 3 or 4 months. And it's crazy that they flipped the script with Anthropic so quickly. But they've been able to undergo this process of change where they're hiring for very compute-intense, research-heavy things. They've trimmed a bunch of their other efforts to focus on building the best model, specifically the coding model. And that is represented in what I'm seeing right now. But there's a strategic move that I want to call out here, which is Sam made a very big bet about a year ago, which is to go all in on compute, Stargate specifically. He also made a very big bet 3 months ago to go all in on coding AI specifically. He's treating this like a warlord empire where his entire ancestral lineage depends on this. So he's not treating this like an enterprise company. He's not really treating this like he has an IPO coming up in a few months. He's like going all in. It kind of reminds me of Larry Page, where he was quoted saying, "We're going to go all in and I'm willing to go bankrupt losing this race, but I can't afford to lose the race." Sam is approaching this in a very similar manner. I don't know if you have any thoughts on OpenAI specifically before I move to Anthropic, Josh, but this was pretty revealing for me.
Yeah, it seems like as they move forward, their focus is on Stargate and building actual data centers. Their focus is on building more efficient code, and then their focus is on these hardware devices. And I guess these Jony Ive devices, the I/O devices that are shipping in parallel, seems like the timelines are pretty tight, and we might even get these before the end of this year. So I think those are probably the three pillars, right? It's just the core software, the hardware, and then the infrastructure. And notably, missing from this is roles for alignment and safety, which seem to be in the minority here, if I'm correct. But that's not the case for Anthropic. Is that a correct assessment?
That is correct. But before we move on to Anthropic, Josh, there is 12% of job postings are in another sector. Can you guess which sector that is in OpenAI?
Hopefully marketing.
Okay,
they got to work on that.
Think about a recent alliance or agreement that they had to sign with a big government entity.
Oh, is this government work?
Yeah, 12%.
Whoa, interesting.
Do you want to know where their second largest employee base is?
Where? Is this the Pentagon?
Washington, D.C., dude.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wait, that's kind of crazy. Interesting.
Yeah. They've aggressively hired on the DC side, which kind of makes sense because Sam has been a huge fan of kind of trying to lobby government entities or just trying to lobby AI policies in general to become more favorable or AI favorable. So it makes sense that he has the largest presence out there, and Anthropic specifically doesn't. But yeah, we can move into Anthropic now.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I had no idea. Yeah, what is Anthropic working on?
Okay, so Anthropic has thankfully a much more well laid out website, which can kind of walk through.
And a lot of open roles. Everyone's saying AI is killing jobs, but man, these companies are hiring.
Did you hear the news? So for the folks listening, Josh and I are based on the East Coast, and in New York specifically, Anthropic is currently about to buy one of the largest office spaces that any tech company has ever bought in the most recent couple of years. They're about to have a huge presence out here, and they're going to be focusing on 3 specific roles. Number 1 is go-to-market, obviously sales. Number 2, enterprise specific. And number 3, the finance bros. They are going wholeheartedly into the financial services sector, and they want every analyst, MD, and fund manager to be using Claude to direct all their different workflows. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, Josh, but they just signed a $1.5 billion joint venture with Goldman Sachs, Blackstone, and I think it's Hellman and Fried to basically integrate Claude into every single one of their portfolio companies. We're talking about like 250 plus portfolio companies for Blackstone alone. And the idea is Anthropic is going to shove a bunch of Anthropic engineers. These are costly people, the most valuable people, into these enterprises to build custom workflows just so that they get hooked on Claude, just so they get addicted on the LLMs. And then the rest kind of like pays for itself, I guess.
Okay, first, where is this building that they're buying? I'm so curious.
Dude, I think it's near the Google office in Chelsea. It's like a massive space. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
and I definitely I noticed the shift to move to financial services. I've seen this a lot with Claude recently.
Yes.
In fact, as we were recording this, they just released an update to finance for Claude, basically, where they're releasing a series of different templates that can do a lot of different things as it relates to financial analysis. So it does models, it does spreadsheets, it does financial projections, it does all of the things that you would hope a analyst would do. Claude is building these as kind of pre-templatized workflows that are built directly into Cowork and Claude Code. So if you want to get evaluation, if you want to get trajectories of pipelines or revenues, all of that is now done within Claude. And I like the shift that we're kind of seeing into the financial services business. It's mostly been open since now. Perplexity is really the only one that's moved into financial services. They've tried that Bloomberg alternative. It's pretty good. But Claude moving into this, here's the post right here of all the things that they're doing. KYC screener, statement and auditor. It's got all of the tools, one-click plugin. So it makes sense that they move to New York, get a little bit closer to Wall Street, and start moving into financials. This is exciting. This is really cool, particularly when the market is ripping the way it is.
Yeah, it's so interesting that like both companies probably at the same time have gone into becoming kind of like a sales and BD driven business. I thought the LLMs would just speak for themselves, but the truth is the technology and power is here. It's just not well enough dispersed, and it's not going to diffuse until you handhold the people. The blocker right now are humans. The blocker is siloed data sets in all of these top enterprises and companies that don't really know how to integrate the thing with AI, and the AI is not smart enough to know how to integrate itself into it. So it's kind of like a chicken and an egg problem, and Anthropic is taking the first step here. OpenAI as well, they've signed a similar joint venture with similar companies to basically put both of their products at the helm here. If we go back to Anthropic in general, the point I want to make around these roles is, listen, they have around the similar amount of roles that OpenAI is hiring for, but the strategy that they're pursuing here is a bit different. They are treating their company as an enterprise services company. So they famously or infamously have not bought as much compute as OpenAI has. As I mentioned, Sam is like the conqueror. He's like, I need all the compute. I'll lever it all up. And if it pays off, it pays off. And it is paying off because now he can serve his Claude Mythos competitor, GPT 5.5, to anyone and everyone. Claude Mythos is still restricted on the Anthropic side. Anthropic is being more strategic. Their bread and butter, the majority of the money that they have made so far, and still, I think it's something crazy like 60% of their revenue recently comes purely from enterprise, and they want to clearly seed that reputation and ramp it up even more. They are focusing primarily on enterprises, which is why we don't see more of a consumer base. You know, we've seen all the crazy social media spread around like restrictions on rate limits and stuff like that. I think that's because they're just focusing wholeheartedly on enterprise customers. They don't want to restrict them. I think they have like, as of 2 weeks ago, they have like 500 to 1,000 clients that pay them well over $1 to $5 million per year. If they can ramp that up, that's a lot of ARR, basically. And they recently hit, 44 billion ARR?
Yeah, pretty good business. And you could start to see the clear divide between these two companies as we go through these job boards and the rumor mills, where OpenAI, they currently have the best image model. They're working on consumer hardware. They're building a lot for consumer. Although they're working on their kind of commercial enterprise segment as well. But Anthropic is all in on enterprise, on financial services, on selling to businesses. And I think that's why we've seen their ARR go completely nuclear, because they're selling much larger ticket items to much more sticky customers that are going to stick around and endure 12, 24-month contracts with these companies. So it's interesting. It's fascinating. The hardware story to me is the most exciting. I cannot wait to get AI first hardware. I hope it's good. I hope it's good. Like WWDC from Apple is happening next month, where hopefully Siri doesn't suck. But the first AI first devices are going to be from OpenAI. And now the timeline might have moved up a little bit sooner. So that news at least is very exciting. This has been an investigative review of what is in store. I think the prompt for you guys is, one, will you use an OpenAI iPhone? Like, will you swap your iPhone for this phone? And I know it's tough to tell without actually having it in your hands to see, but it seems like such a stretch. What about you? Any final parting thoughts before we head out for the day?
I want to see the device. I want to see some visuals.
So bad,
you know why I feel this way? Like, don't even give me the device. It's that Dime advert with Alexander Skarsgård or whatever, which, I don't know, turned out to be a fake or a dud or a Chinese pair of earbuds. I need something from OpenAI, and they're the only ones that are leading it. Yeah,
so bad. Well, hopefully we get that before we get... Will we get a better Siri before we get an OpenAI hardware device? That's the question. Who knows? Probably not. Probably not. But that is the episode for today. Just thank you for all of this investigative journalism into the job boards here, for giving us some guidance on all things OpenAI, all things Anthropic. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to share it with a friend who might also enjoy this, who might also be interested in the crazy cool new hardware leaks that are coming. If you enjoyed, leave a comment down below. You subscribe on YouTube, leave us a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.